Hey y'all, and welcome to the Diverse Minds Modern Therapy Podcast. I'm Charles,
I'm Kody.
and this is a podcast for neurodivergent individuals and their loved ones, where we discuss navigating the world through different lenses. In today's episode, we will be discussing how to support students without major burnout. So this is probably more catered to those teachers, educators, people that work with children. A lot of questions about a lot of these topics, but we're going to hit on a few that we are getting the most regularly. So our first question is, are you ready?
Yes.
Why am I so exhausted managing my students this year?
Well, first of all, teaching most important job in the world, but also one of the most challenging jobs in the world.
Sure.
Thinking about like a regular workplace, you interact with, adults, it's predictable. They present variables, but for the most part, everybody has this like social contract. 5-year-olds do not have social contracts. They don't believe in that. And you're dealing with what? Like anywhere from 15 to 30 of them at one time. What we also know about an average classroom is about 20% of your friends are going to need some sort of adaptive learning, whether that be social, emotional, social, academic. So on top of the variables of like Kimmy didn't sleep and Charles's parents are going through a divorce and it's the Friday before winter break, you are also working with these students who may not always fit into like a typical academic model. And so you're just constantly like every second of every day flexing this muscle of flexibility and regulation and understanding of how to meet the needs of 30 individuals while teaching them all at the same time. It's a really complex dance and you can't expect
Very.
yourself to be perfect if you're scoring 80% on everything and all your goals, and that's a really impressive percentage with all of those variables at hand.
I think why you're exhausted, it's very clear. You're managing a classroom of tons of students, your aid, your transitions to other classrooms, other teachers, how they interact with your students. So I think it's not about why and more how do we manage. So
Yeah.
again, especially with your mention of the 20% neurodivergent students within the classroom, how do we, from the beginning of the year or following a break, identify the student needs and already adapt the classroom to support those students, but actually it's to support the entire classroom and help with your exhaustion, your burnout, so that your classroom's running a little bit more smoothly and more efficiently.
Yeah. And how are we measuring success? What does that look like during first period, during this challenging segment, during the school assembly, for the first month of school year, for the whole year of school year? And again, not just outwardly, not just focusing on conference forums for our students, but us as a teacher, like where are we at? Are we a 20-year veteran? Or are we a second year teacher who's never really had any interaction with neurodivergent little ones or parents of neurodivergent children, or had to manage a classroom of not only students, but also two aides? How does that work? Like, again, am I supposed to know all those answers? No. If I write it out, if I have these things documented, I can see these goals, then I can give myself appropriate expectations and be more successful in the long.
Yeah, I think one thing that I see a lot of teachers kind of shying away from is reaching out to their administration for support.
Yeah.
We have the opportunity in LA to work with a lot of amazing administrative teams that are always there to support and help their teachers, but a lot of teachers are just not reaching out for that support.
Yeah. Keeping in mind those administrators more than likely were just in the classroom or have that classroom experience, or know a little bit more or maybe just as much about a particular student and what they need, but at least they're there to be somebody to consult with, collaborate with parents or other providers to hopefully create resources and create strategies that, again, not only benefit the individual student, but we know works for those 20% of neurodivergent students, also benefits the whole classroom.
Yeah, I think another part of managing it is identifying when your students are ready to learn and when to take a break for yourself and when to incorporate things into your day that may help with your mental health, but also help the children maybe come to a calming point.
Yeah.
Something that happened yesterday in the classroom, my phone went off.
Yeah.
All the kids started laughing.
Yeah.
They weren't stopping. It was a huge interruption to class, but guess what? I started laughing too, and I used it as like a 3-minute break. Now,
one of my favorite things that, Charles, I think that you do, that you always push, is accepting and having a proactive awareness of like what is developmental appropriate. Like if a student burps during circle time, while that's hopefully not something consistently happen or necessarily appropriate, if peers giggle and if it does interrupt circle time for a minute, that's healthy. Like, that's okay. Like, those things should occur all the time. If I'm always resistant to that experience, if I'm fighting it or avoiding it, I'm not really serving myself, nor am I serving the classroom. If I recognize, like, okay, everybody, let's breathe, let's let them giggle, let me pause the book for a second, give them a minute. Maybe you did this yesterday. We shake the wiggles out, do a dance, come back, I present something really fun, and we work through it. That's a far more successful strategy than always like, don't do that, or like, oh my God, this can never happen. No, stuff happens. It's life. Those experiences are awesome learning opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue into our next question, which is why do my classroom strategies work one day, but not the next?
Ooh, well, again, so many variables. I mean, Timmy was well rested yesterday. He was a lot more receptive, a lot more regulated, open to the strategy. The next day, he slept 3 hours and he didn't eat breakfast. Those kind of things you can't control all the time and you can't always predict. So that could be that's like just a common variable that we see in the classroom. I think the other thing is it's really difficult to be consistent, and consistency is the most important trait and habit that you want to provide as a teacher. And so, like, did we deliver it in the correct way? Did Timmy absorb it in the correct way? Was he utilizing his receptive listening skills when you were presenting it? One thing that I know we're going to talk about probably today, and one thing we always stress, especially for teachers of young learners, what we know about their brains is they can consume far more visually than they ever will verbally. And while we want to teach them the verbal skills and we want to talk to them, if you're trying to stay consistent with strategies, always present them in a visual form and a tangible form. So very experiential is going to be beneficial to that consistency, and then picking up on those concepts much faster and then being able to verbalize them or understand them verbally.
Yeah, I think, and something that we did yesterday with the group we were working with was they weren't understanding some of the concepts, and I was just talking to them, but we showed them concrete examples. So, like flexible thinking, for example, I dropped my notebook and like all my papers flew out. Like, how would you respond? They could respond to that much more easily than they could when we were just like asking them in a scenario-based form.
Yeah.
So, depending on the age group and how your group learns, those visuals will be much more beneficial.
Lots of tangible role play. One exercise that we love to introduce to teachers is a post-recess social emotional learning segment where we come back after recess. Maybe we do like a wind down activity, and then immediately we reference something that happened at recess, whether it be like something kind, like a friend helped a friend up after they fell, or whether it be two friends struggled with conflict management and sharing. Using that as an example, and with a teacher or with maybe a really strong student, role playing and going over those scenarios so they can tangibly see it, right? Like, Charles has the frisbee, I want the frisbee. How can we role play that during circle time, and getting feedback from friends? What should this look like? What action should you take? And then obviously making sure we celebrate that practice, rinse and repeat every day. That's a simple 5-minute exercise that can really make a massive difference. One thing that you can add to that too, with the advent of AI, really quickly you can make videos, customized videos or customized books, and utilize scenarios that are frequently happening in class. You can utilize photos, maybe not of the students, but of your playground or specific apparatuses or specific situations that are really tangible for the student and increase that social emotional learning. And best part, reduce the amount of time that you have to intervene or teach those skills on the playground.
Yeah, so in summary, what I'm hearing from this is consistency.
Yes.
Picking your battles.
Yes.
Identifying the student's motivation or the time of day when your expectations are there.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, we didn't mention this one, but following through.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
So if you don't think you're going to win the battle, don't pick the battle, because if you can't follow through, you're just setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of strategies, but I really encourage like initial investment that becomes maintenance and teaches a specific skill along the way. So many times we get feedback from teachers, well, like, I told him not to hit and he keeps hitting, or I tried this and he keeps hitting. Like, okay, what is the skill that he's lacking? Is it tolerating waiting his turn? Is it tolerating accepting something isn't available? Is he hitting because he really enjoys that social experience and he doesn't know how to initiate or engage appropriately? Once we determine like why it's occurring, what is the skill we can teach every day? And again, while it may benefit that one specific student, if we're doing that role play for 5 minutes after recess or before recess, it not only helps him, but it helps the friend he wants to connect with. Not only helps the friend he wants to connect with, but it also helps the whole classroom, including the teachers.
Perfect. So Another segue, that's a great point. How do I support neurodivergent students or students who need more support without neglecting the rest of the class?
Oh
We get this a lot.
man, we get this question all the time. Like teachers come to me and they feel like they tell us I feel like as a teacher I spend 80% of my time with one or two students. It's a real challenge, right? This is where we want to be as proactive as possible and noting these sort of patterns that we're recognizing with the student, right? Circle time's really hard. Transitions from preferred activities are really hard. Okay, cool. Let's not think that we can address every pattern. And sometimes students need more support than I can provide within
Yeah.
the classroom. But let me pick one pattern. Maybe it's not always the most impactful, but it's the easiest. It's something they do 50% of the time, or a little bit less, or a little bit more. And let's determine like that's the hill we want to fight. That's the one that we want to focus on every day. As we observe the pattern, what is the student trying to accomplish, and where is the gap in their skill? If they're running out of circle time because they don't want to participate, okay, he's not ready to participate in circle time. How long can he sit? Or what is the skill that I can teach him? What do I want? What I want him to do is just leave circle time quietly and appropriately so he doesn't interrupt the rest of his friends' learning. Okay, I want to teach him a silent signal, or I'd like to teach him a phrase like, hey, I need space, or I need a break. Can I go to the calm corner? Something that's productive and works towards the larger goal of him learning the content.
I think expanding on the idea of strategies to implement, I think communication across adults that are working with the child is
Yes.
something that I see missing in a lot of classrooms. Either
Yep.
the teachers aren't instructing their aides, or they have a new aide that's brand new, never been in a school setting before, but so they're always stepping in and interrupting their lecture or their class time to support this child. But those short meetings, having a plan written out,
Yep.
having specific strategies that everyone is on board with,
Yep.
will really help not only that child's success, but the success of the classroom.
Yep. Code words, silent signals. You know, we talked about it. Hey, we know circle time's really hard. If I give you the number one finger, if I hold it up, I'd like you to go prompt him to use his words and ask for a break or ask for space. Other things that I want to keep in mind as teachers is like sometimes, and this is a really great thing, right? We're so focused on academic success or meeting the curriculum milestones. That's not always the win, right? Like if the student by the end of the year doesn't sit for all 15 minutes of circle time, but can appropriately ask for a break, can knows to utilize like some sort of fidget or some sort of wobbly seat so he can sustain 8 minutes on there, that's a bigger win than really anything, right? Like he needs those fundamental root skills in order to access the book or in order to access the songs. So I think recognizing that it's great that to teach the curriculum, it's great to have some milestones to work towards. The challenge would be, and this is really hard because you have so many students, is like not every student's milestones should be the same because they're all individuals.
Yeah, and I think that's where talking to your administrative team is really important, because there are a lot of teachers have expressed to me pressures from an admin, or they, even if it's not true pressure, but it's internal pressure to meet certain academic milestones throughout the year, to feel like they're like adequately doing their job. But that's not going to be the same path for every student, especially if they have some type of additional need.
But once you can identify that measurement of what success looks like in this particular segment, then it really helps take pressure off you, helps take pressure off the student, and also focuses on like, you know, increasing that rapport and that buy-in and that like comfort from both parties, and that always increases success.
Yeah, I think that kind of going into our next question, we get a lot of students and teachers asking questions about placement. So how do we know when the behavior is more than just a classroom management issue, and when the child needs either extra support within the classroom, or maybe the classroom is not the best fit for them?
Yeah. Well, it's a really assessment of yourself first, right? Like, what are the skills that I have? Have I supported a similar profile in the past? What is my school able to accommodate, and how can we provide support? I mean, there's things that like, even if initially it's maybe somewhat of a safety concern, you know, like a student isn't listening and coming back from recess, that we consider that a safety concern. That doesn't mean that this school isn't the appropriate placement. What I think it means is if you find that the strategies that you feel confident in and comfortable with and that have worked for other students, you're not having success with, that's an opportunity where you need to consult with your admin team so they can provide either outside supports or additional supports within the school, or maybe a veteran teacher that has other skills that you don't. As you try those out, you want to document as much as you can to say like, hey, we tried X, it didn't work. Then we tried Z and it didn't work. and then we tried why and it didn't work. Consulting with the parents is obviously really important because they may be doing things at the home that's either working against what you're trying to do, or maybe they're trying the same strategies and they're not having success. But I think it's important that you document and try steps 1, 2, and 3 before we move to the next level, which would be, again, consulting admin. And then admin tries steps 3, 4, and 5, and then they consult with a professional or outside resource.
Got it. So, I mean, in terms of that too, I know we talk about in IEP world, least restrictive environment, but
Yeah.
we also we work in a lot of private schools. We want to make sure that we're not just trying to accommodate the child in the classroom, that they could actually be way more successful in another school.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think again, it's a balance to, especially we work a lot of like early elementary schools, and oftentimes the child doesn't have the autonomy or the language or the understanding yet to communicate what they need in school. So it comes down to the administrators and the teachers and the parents working together to make those choices. But I think out of respect, you owe the family and the child an opportunity to have success with an environment that they've chosen, right, within their neighborhood, whether like, or their church, their institution that they're connected with, before you find like, oh, we need additional help, or this isn't the space for them.
Yeah, I think with parents also, it's important to make sure you have open communication with them, updating them when things are happening in the classroom, updating them when they're meeting or
Yeah.
not meeting certain milestones or certain expectations within the classroom, and also continually documenting so that when you do
Yeah.
have to have those hard conversations, there's some objective information to refer back to
Yeah.
and kind of like a timeline of their progress.
Yeah.
So,
I just wanted to say too, to add to that, the two things that I think are, I mean, there's so many things that are important, but what are the two things that are most important when you recognize maybe a student is going to need more adaptive learning is just how can I emphasize not only rapport with them, so they hopefully walk into my classroom every day with a smile, and I hopefully approach them every day with a smile, but also what's the rapport that I can build with parents? Because the more investment and more rapport I have with parents, the more maybe those challenging conversations that we have to have and asking for help or additional support, the easier that goes over. There shouldn't be if once we identify a student who's going to need more adaptive learning, there should be no surprises for parents by the time conferences come.
for sure.
We should already have that relationship built, some sort of communication. And again, I know that there are a million things that teachers need to do. And this is back to Charles's point of like, let's use our admin team. Let's make sure that we're not bearing the responsibility of this child exclusively on ourselves because they're a part of a whole school.
Yeah, that actually, all these questions build today. So, how do I talk to parents about their child getting additional support?
Wow.
Kind of
Okay.
just covered it, but like, let's give
Yeah. Well,
another
let's
like
not do it
synopsis.
alone, right? Let's make sure we're going through all the steps and make sure that we've turned every stone. If it's like an immediate safety concern, like those conversations should have a little bit faster. Once we have identified that the child might need support, we want to make sure we document as much as we can. And again, you don't need to spend your whole day following them around, but take 5 minutes or have your aide take 5 minutes during the patterns that we've recognized are most challenging, and just document what we see a few times a week. So parents have that information. If they find a provider, they have that information. Obviously, admin has that source. Again, those early investments in rapport are going to be really important once you have that. And then it's about communicating with the admin team and letting don't face this alone. Like make sure you recognize they're responsible for having the communication with the parents and you're responsible for what you can control. And that's hopefully creating the most success in your classroom.
For sure. Yeah. Again, I'm gonna always reiterate documentation, communication,
Yeah.
build that rapport,
Yeah.
no secrets. Because then if you're too scared to tell them in the beginning of the year, and then when it actually comes time and it's like we have to say something, then the parents are gonna be like, what the hell? So
Yeah. And
again,
I think sometimes the feedback that we get about documentation and communication with parents, it's like, well, I don't want to share bad news, right? I want you to think about it in terms of respect.
yeah.
If you wait a year for this child to potentially receive services that they need or potentially, make adjustments to the classroom or their placement, it's not very respectful to the student. And your job as an educator is safety, respect, kindness, and learning.
Child
And
first.
yeah, child first. All those things come about having tough conversations with admin, having tough conversations with parents, turning over every stone in my resources and my experience as a teacher to provide support to this child during different challenging parts of the day.
Wrapping this one up. So this was a big one. We could talk about this for days and days and
Part
days.
2 coming soon.
So the final question, I think that we get this in different forms from many of the teachers, clinicians, administrators that we work with, but they care so deeply about their classroom, the students, the other people in their room, but they are feeling so drained or so unmotivated to come to work because so many things are happening. What advice would you give to those individuals?
Well, I think, we practice acceptance and commitment therapy. First of that word being acceptance. It is never been more challenging to be a teacher, unfortunately.
For sure.
The least amount of resources, the most amount of information in terms of being aware that 20% of your classroom needs adaptive learning. It's really, really challenging. Now, what we find in classrooms, and this isn't to put any teachers down because we know how complicated the role is. We also know that there's not always resources or experience provided, but we find teachers often resisting that 20 or resisting the modern challenges of children having access to iPad and how that's kind of changed a lot of parenting and changed a lot of cognitive development. And so you can live in the world of resistance and see these challenges as insurmountable, or you can be present and teach the population that you're given. And when you start working towards acceptance through your thoughts, actions, and words, you remember why you fell in love and wanted to be a teacher in the first place, because you start seeing student success and you start connecting and building relationships. And that's what it's all about.
I think another part of that is also the flexibility. Like, this is a time where it's iPad generation, COVID kids, all of those things, but we're going to continually hit these changes, and your classroom is going to continually get different populations of kids. So we have to be flexible and continue to adapt our teaching and classrooms and everything to accommodate the kids that we're working with. It's not going to be the same every year.
And it's a hard investment, but if you make the investment in the short term, again, that's the greatest job in the world. And one of the reasons it is because it's like you can't put a dollar amount on what it brings in terms of like joy and feeling of like the difference you're making in the world. But with anything like that provides so much surplus of joy, it takes effort and it's challenging, and go for it.
Go for it. Well, as always, thank you for joining us. We will see you next time. And if you have any questions, ask us. We can cover them in our next one. Bye.